Okay, so today is officially the day that Payday 3's third year begins. Disregarding the 3 days of early access, September 21st, 2023 was day 1. And here we are 2 years later. Over the last few weeks, I've reflected on Year 2 to discuss its shortcomings, but also some of the more positive things that came out of it, whether that be the termination of the Plyon agreements, or more recently, the statements from the new CEO. I think Payday 3's second year was marginally weaker from a content perspective than the year before it, but certain happenings within Starbreeze itself saw me growing increasingly optimistic for the future during Year 3 and hopefully beyond. That said, as I've been thinking about this even more, I think there are two main directions that I could see Payday 3's third year heading in, based on what's been said in the last few weeks alone. One of which is exactly what I think we all want to see, and the other is slightly different. I anticipate in the next handful of weeks it's going to become very clear exactly what direction Starbreeze are going to be taking Payday 3 in during its third year, as the company's new CEO has made it abundantly clear that they'll be sharing what their plans are for the next year, either before the end of September or during early October, which, given Starbreeze's track record of keeping to release windows as of recent, I'm hoping means we'll hear something by the end of 2025 at the very latest. All jokes aside though, I wanted to make this video before Year 3 probably begins to get a bit of a conversation going about where we want to be in a year's time from now, for reasons that I'll touch on towards the end of the video. But for now, the first way I see Payday 3's third year playing out is that Starbreeze go all guns blazing. The team, now under new management and with more resources at their disposal, could really use the momentum of a brand new year to try and turn the ship around. We've had mentions of a desired 4 to 6 week update cadence, and perhaps that's exactly what they'll try to build up to in the early parts of the game's third year. I'm not necessarily saying we can expect such rapid update releases starting within the next few weeks, but perhaps there's a goal to reach that frequency by January or February. Alongside all of the content I anticipate to be coming in those updates, we'll also start to see exactly what AK meant when he said he wanted Payday 3 to be changed from the ground up, with things like adjustments to tedious circle-based objectives within heists that have been here since day 1, and further to these changes, we'll hopefully get the long-awaited implementation of a skills rework, as well as some fundamental changes to the way the game is actually built, allowing for the long-awaited arrival of a full-time offline mode, and if we're lucky, maybe even peer-to-peer. In between major content additions, we might even start to see smaller updates, adding things like a gadget or a weapon here and there to tide us over. These small updates wouldn't even necessarily have to introduce content to be engaging. I still stand by the addition of the LMG on Touch the Sky to tease its release in the next update as being the single coolest thing Payday 3 has ever done, so please, Starbreeze, give us more of that. AK has said that he expects we'll be talking about a pretty different game in around 6 to 9 months, so let's say that's exactly how long this is all gonna take. That leaves us with around 3 months worth of wiggle room to either get the last few parts of these major Year 3 changes out the door that may have encountered unanticipated roadblocks, or if everything comes out as and when it is expected to, we could just spend the last 3 months of Year 3 receiving consistent content before we go into Year 4. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking. Not only is that a lot of work for the team to be doing, that's also a very, very optimistic outlook on what Year 3 could look like. And you know what? You'd be 100% right in saying that. I don't know how much preparation has already been done for Year 3. We are starting to get little nuggets of information that allude to the next heist being in development.
How is the next heist soundtrack hooking up? I mean, we can't really share much about the next heist yet, but yeah. I'm sure you've started on the music, right?
No, yes, I did. It's coming. I cannot say much about it. I hope it will be fun. It will be interesting. There's some specifics to it that are unique to that heist. That's as far as I'm gonna go.
That's fair.
about
That is fair. There you go. There's your teaser, chat.
But I really fear that even though what AK has been saying recently gives me the impression that the plan is to go full throttle on the game's third year, that might not necessarily be the best idea. I don't think Payday 3 will survive another burst of updates in quick succession that later falls into a period of silence. Equally, I don't think the game is ever going to get off of the ground with smaller incremental updates that build on its foundations just very slowly. The game needs something big to get people back on board. And because of that, I think it's a very real possibility that Payday 3's third year plays out completely differently than a push towards trying to revive the game this year. The second way I could see Payday 3's third year panning out is going down that Cyberpunk or No Man's Sky approach to fixing the things that need to be fixed. I think this is much less likely to be the case for year 3, but it's been on my mind so much recently. There have been comparisons made between the situations both Cyberpunk and No Man's Sky found themselves in, and where they eventually got to, and the situation that Payday 3 is in at the moment. Both of those games had absolutely awful launches and failed to deliver on a lot of the promises they made before launch, in much the same way Payday 3 did. However, unlike Payday 3, and I wouldn't include Operation Medic Bag as an example of Starbreeze doing this, both with Cyberpunk and No Man's Sky, the developers took a major step back, went away for quite a while, and reworked major parts of the game before coming back with almost a complete relaunch. So far, I've been really hesitant to agree that Payday 3 can make a comeback in the same vein that both of those games did, simply because Payday 3 hasn't had the same kind of long update drought that sees the developers going back to the drawing board and tends to precede the major reinventions that those games had. Instead, for the last 2 years, Starbreeze's approach has involved trying to rework certain systems while still keeping a somewhat consistent update cadence. Not only does fixing a game in the position Payday 3 found itself in one small update at a time make it exceptionally difficult for players that aren't already clued in with what's going on with each update to actually know when it's worth jumping back into the game, but sadly, I also just don't think Payday 3's current active audience is large enough to warrant siphoning resources away from major game improvements that are undoubtedly going to take a long time to complete just for the sake of putting out an update for around 1,000 players to engage with for less than a week. That's an awfully blunt thing to say, especially from me, but hard to argue that it isn't true. So, which of these two directions do I think is more likely to be the way Payday 3's third year plays out? Honestly, the truth, as it so often does, is likely to lie in the middle. I don't think year 3 is going to be this absolute content explosion that some of us may want it to be, and transparently, I don't know if Starbreeze have the courage to turn around and go quiet while they properly address the major issues that the game has, without trying to keep whatever interest there currently is around the game alive, and instead preparing for a hard relaunch once the game is in a significantly better state. So, why would I bother talking about two completely different extremes of what Payday 3's third year is likely to look like, just to turn around and say that I don't actually know, and it's just likely to be somewhere in between? Well, the answer is quite simple. I wanted this video to get you thinking about where you want Payday 3 to be in a year's time, and by extension, what you think is going to happen during year 3. I'm going to be hosting an anniversary livestream today where we'll discuss as a community what we think is going to happen during the game's third year, and where we think we'll be in exactly 1 year's time from today. And from our conversation, I'm going to be making a completely separate video to act as a time capsule of our ideas, which I will set to release on September 21st, 2026. Exactly 1 year from now, which will hopefully be marking day 1 of Payday 3's 4th year, if we make it that far. I'll be live at around 5 PM BST today on Sunday, so if you have enjoyed this video or want to catch that live stream when it happens, all I ask is that you consider subscribing. If you want to learn exactly what big claims the new CEO has been making recently, you can click the video on screen now for a full discussion of everything that Adolf Christiansen has been saying. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.